Okay, welcome to the Voice of San Diego, Friday 5, live at 5. I'm Scott Lewis. Uh, this was an incredible week for people who care about the stuff that I care about. So that seems like you're a likely candidate if you're watching this. So we've got a lot to process. Somebody asked me earlier about everything that happened, and I just had to point out, I don't know. I'm having trouble processing it. We've got school openings. We've got a big debate we hosted this week about the 79th Assembly District, vacation rentals. Also, I just heard my parents' poor dog was hit by a car just now, and they're having to deal with that. And my son was with them, and he's so he doesn't even like when I burn a newspaper that has a dog ad in it. You know what I mean? This is so that was so I'm a little bit off worried about that. Hope they're okay. I think it sounds like the dog's going to be okay, but whew, that's just not good. Dogs and cars. Give your dog a good pet. All right, we got a lot, like I said, to process. Let's go into the one that's obviously going to be most of interest to people out there who care about things like what I care about, and that's our big week for schools and whether they will open for in-person education. Let's just get into the basics. San Diego Unified, its board and its teachers union made an agreement without actually a vote, which is interesting at the board level. Richard Barrera basically can kind of just run this place as a board member, and he and the teachers union made a deal that our reopening plan will apply to all grade levels, and there will be plans to reopen classrooms and return to in-person instruction the week of April 12th. The district said this exciting news takes into account the trend of lower cases and the vaccines available to teachers. Now, look at how they put that. They said the plans to reopen classrooms the week of April 12th, 2021. Okay, so this news came out first. I saw it on a 10 News report that day. And, it said that the board had made that decision, but the board wasn't to meet till later. So it turns out the source was Richard Barrera, the president of the school board, San Diego Unified School District. And he says, and so this is the announcement. Now, the announcement is basically 3 parts. Teachers need to have the vaccine, access to the vaccine, though it won't be mandated. And so thus they need to have the vaccines being made available to them tomorrow. And thus they have 6 weeks from this point to get the second vaccine dose and wait to get full immunity after that. Then they'll go back to the classrooms, and a week later they will open. That's where the April 12th date came. Now, how sure is it? Well, apparently it's not that sure. So one of the participants in the debate about the 79th Assembly District is Shane Suzanne Parmalee, and she was a member of the San Diego Education Association, the union, the teachers union, and the California Teachers Association. And she said that there was that this was not at all the case, that this was the day that they would open. Here was the take.
So, no, they didn't say they're opening the entire school April 12th. It was interesting to watch that get put out in the media. Both the union and the school district was like, that's interesting because nothing's finalized. So it's fascinating when the media is always ahead of everybody saying stuff, and then the district and the union have to come back afterwards and try to clarify.
Okay, so it wasn't the media making this up. It was Richard Barrera who said that. to the news outlets. And then they put out announcements again that were very clear that they were they were opening classrooms, planned to open classrooms April 12th, and that this was there. Now, so I think what she's saying is like, we don't know that the case rate will get down there, and we don't know that the vaccines or whatever will. This is just, that's maybe the day it might work out. Might not, may not. I don't know. But that's not the ambiguity they're communicating. And the news media didn't just make this up. This was Richard Barrera, the source, in saying these things. He's the president of the school board. So if he says that they're going to open, or that this is the plan to open, he's trying to tell parents something that they want to hear. So I think that there is going to be a big series of questions we're all going to have to answer. Let's get to that. So it sounds like the principals across the city are also just kind of taken aback by this news. Like, okay, what exactly are we going to be doing here? Because there's tons of questions. What exactly is it? Phase 2? Because if it's phase 2 of the San Diego Unified School District plan to reopen, then that means it'll be 4 days a week for half days for kids who up to 5th grade. Now we have a school here that's nearby that's a 5th and 6th grade mix. So does half the school. So anyway, there's a lot of little questions that these places have to deal with. A lot of questions about what time exactly do they have to leave school? Can parents drop them off inside? Will there be after school care? That's a really big one, because if you're a working parent, a half day of somebody making sure your child is safe is good, but it's also itself a little bit disruptive about what you're going to do. So I think that there's that question. The other question that dogs me, that I talked about last week a little bit, is, are teachers going to be required to maintain not only an in-person educational experience, but also a Zoom educational experience? Because if so, that sounds like torture, and they should. I don't want to torture them. I'd love to have them teach in person. I'm very excited about that, but I also don't want to torture them. And I don't know that it's the best for either world. They should set up a studio that teaches kids online really well, with people who enjoy doing it and don't want to go in person, in running it, and hopefully with the best training and best equipment possible to do it really well. And they should do all the kids who want to learn from home, no matter where they live. And then the people who are teaching in person should teach in person and be present for people. One thing it's hard to be present for people when you're on your phone or on Zoom. And I understand they could I don't know how they stagger it, but anyway, it seems like a lot of logistical challenges, and it doesn't seem like they have any answers all about how this is going to work. And principals and others are like, all right, that's a good framework you've come up with there, but now we've had like a year. Now, where are the plans? Where are the ideas? And I'm getting a little bit of a mixed message from people, not a mixed message, a message of panic from people who are supposed to pull this off. And so let's see how it goes. I'm excited that they've made a commitment to reopen with these things coming together. But we have people saying that this is not at all a promise to reopen, and people calling it a plan to reopen are mistaken about the date. They're just coming up with the date. And then we have these other problems and questions coming forward. That all said, yeah, sure, I'm thrilled. I am so excited that they've come to this, and it's only because the numbers are getting better. Look at the hospitalizations. Just a few weeks ago, 1,465 people were in the hospital suffering with COVID-19. Now that has gotten down to 569. It's 569. And it's just plummeting. This is such good news. It is so important. We are getting our life back. We're getting immunity. We're getting we're seeing the promised land. We're seeing the oasis. We're not there yet, but this was nice to hear. That all said, lots of questions. Let's go to number 2. And as long as there's questions, people are going to keep using it for politics. This is Kevin Faulkner's running for governor. Do you guys remember, like, several months ago when I was like, the mayor should care about this issue? And he and they didn't do anything. They just made fun of me, which is fine. But I remember being like really out of my mind interested in them caring about this issue. Just like, hey, the mayor's office should care about this issue, this schools issue. And that was Mayor Kevin Faulconer. And finally, he started caring about it. Remember, the one thing he did was send a letter to the governor demanding that they get to 10,000 tests per day for teachers and students in San Diego Unified. That was the demand. They have not gotten there. And yet now he's saying they need to open, and we need to throw out the governor because they didn't open. By his own standard, they haven't reached the time that they should be able to open. He enforced this idea that they needed far more tests to be able to open. Now you might say, well, okay, instead they could have vaccines. That's the plan, is to give them the vaccines now and to open. So nonetheless, now he's Mr. Schools. Here's a video he put out this week. Kevin Faulconer running for governor.
San Francisco is suing its school district.
Mental fallout and the rising suicide rate among young people.
Board members were caught bashing parents.
They want their babysitters back.
Gavin Newsom has had a year to come up with a plan to safely reopen schools, but he's failed.
Again, the governor is going to face a lot of political problems because of this and many other issues. And he deserves to be held accountable for these kinds of things. It's fine. But again, I can't help but be a little pained that after trying for months to get local officials like him to care about schools and do something about them, he wouldn't. And now it's his entire obsession. Months. In fact, they would send letters about businesses that need to be open. And I would say, hey, you guys should do schools too. You should talk about schools, lead on schools, try to figure something out about schools. And they didn't do it. They didn't care. So I'm sorry. I'm always when I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to always do this. All right. Let's go to number 3. All right, so we did have a debate this week with the people who want to represent the 79th Assembly District. Let's remember the 79th Assembly District. What a wild district, man. Gets into the heart of like north of 8, sort of Tierra Santa type areas. It gets well, I guess that's, I'm not, yeah. And then La Mesa, Lemon Grove, southeastern San Diego stretch, got these arms into urban areas like National City. You've got South Bay. You've got this kind of open rural area. I mean, what a district. Very diverse. And was represented by Shirley Weber, one of the most interesting legislators I have ever seen. So I have a very strong interest and I want to host. We had a great debate. I could have gone 3 hours, probably should have gone 3 hours. They were into it. I was into it. The crowd was into it. You guys were commenting a ton and it was really interesting. So we decided to pull some highlights. We already showed that one of Shane Parmalee. She had a lot to say about police, about schools. That question came up about schools. The legislature has been debating whether to give them this incentive to open around the time that San Diego Unified plans to open, and the $2 billion that they'll put out to help that. Now, Ting, the legislator from San Francisco, who was, I think it's Phil Ting, right? Ting. He said, like, I don't want them to waste this money like we saw them do this last year with all the money we gave them to try to support reopening. And so it's a really interesting discussion. It's called AB 86. And we addressed it in there. Here was one take. This was Marco Contreras, who's running. He's a Republican running, and he stood out very much in this debate as the Republican running against 4 other Democrats, pretty progressive Democrats. And here was his take on that assembly bill. Is there something about the bill, SB 86, would you have supported the governor's version of it to push them to open in February, or is the whole framework of money to push them to open something you would have rejected?
I think I would have said, hey, first of all, let's open up. But I've seen that the bill is incomplete. I think we need a little more funding, and we do need to get the vaccines for the teachers.
So that was one thing we talked about, vaccines for teachers. We asked them all if they would mandate vaccines for teachers. Not a single one said that they would, which I thought was interesting. We also got into a big discussion about police reform and police issues, criminal justice. Obviously, Shirley Weber was big on schools and on police. I asked about police reform. Her daughter, Akilah Weber, the doctor from La Mesa, city councilwoman, who we've had on this show before, she answered a question about police reform in this.
There are policies and laws within California that make it extremely hard to deal with those one or two officers that are bad apples or who have gone rogue. And those are the things that need to change. Those are the obstacles that I came up against when I was trying to deal with that officer who did what he did at MTS. Those are the issues that the California Legislative Black Caucus have been dealing with and the bills that they're bringing forth. So when you're talking about decertification, you're not just saying just anybody in general. We're talking about repetitive behavior, because that's what you see when you have these rogue or these individual bad cops. But I don't think anybody on here said that all cops are bad.
And that was in response to Marco Contreras' allegation that that's what they were getting into, the all cops were bad. Obviously, one person who on the panel who is deeply interested in criminal justice reform is Arameet Glass-Blake, and she has been involved in restorative justice in some of these causes for quite some time. And one of the questions I asked all the people on the panel was whether they would take police union support, because that's been kind of an interesting debate on the left, at least. And it has led to some, the mayor took the police union's endorsement and support and stood by it when the Democratic Party called on him not to. So it's kind of an interesting cleave within the progressive and Democratic effort. And so I asked all the candidates about that. Here was Arameet Glass-Blake's response.
When you take money from police unions and police associations, a lot of the work and the policy that you are going to try to get done, they're going to try to stop that. And I'm not expecting anything from you. But as for the rest of us, when we try to get policies done, Dr. Weber's bill, the bill looked a lot different initially. AB 932 looked a lot different, but it had to get watered down. Why? Because police unions came to the table and wanted to try to negotiate. And this is why we still have some of the issues we have today. When you take union money, when you take money from special interests and establishment, then you are going to adhere to what they want you to do and not what is in the best interest of the community.
So that was a really interesting point. Now, the other candidates, Akilah Weber also said she would not take police union support. Leticia Munguia did not say that. She said that she would absolutely consider it. She would talk with them, as did, of course, Marco Contreras. And I'm not sure I gave Shane the exact clear chance to respond. She did not indicate for sure that she wouldn't take it before talking about a few other things. So that was. I'm assuming she would probably not, but I don't know for sure. I should have followed up a little bit more clearly, as I did with somebody else, about whether she did or did not want to take their support. So interesting. We had some interesting asides about unions, as you saw there. That was about the police union. Leticia Munguia is a police union, or is not a police union, is a union employee herself. She works with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, and I think she, is part of a movement that I think is very clearly part of the labor movement. And so she had a take, as you might expect, on unions as well.
There's a difference, and I think what you have all identified in your various comments is there's a difference between a labor organization and then the power of the members of a union that is able to make sure that our worker rights are protected on the job. I think all of you have mentioned that.
Munguia has the support of Lorena Gonzalez, Assemblywoman who's who wanted to be Secretary of State, except the governor picked Shirley Weber to be Secretary of State, and that's why we're having this debate at all. And so Leticia Munguia We also talked about mandating vaccines, like I said, a few other things. It was I thought it was a great discussion. So if you want to check it out, go to voicesandiego.org. We have it up there. We have it on our YouTube channel. We'll post the link to that. The person who makes this thing possible is Megan Wood. She probably doesn't want me to talk about her too much, but she's awesome. She's the one that makes this at all interesting. And thank you so much, Megan. Shout out to Megan there. All right, let's go on to our number 3 or 4. Vacation rentals. So we called this a San Diego special. You might remember a few years ago, San Diego current mayor, Todd Gloria, he tried to coin a phrase for these issues in San Diego that we just can't resolve for whatever reason, like vacation rentals. I think like the Mount Soledad Cross, that's the seals, those kinds of things that are like, they just paralyze our civic discussion because we're unable to resolve the dilemma. And vacation rentals clearly fit within that. There is a group of people who believe that vacation rentals are already illegal and should be obliterated with enforcement from the city and legal authorities. And they say that because there is no actual definition of, vacation rentals or short-term rentals within the code of the municipal code. And so they're like, well, so they're de facto not allowed. Now, there is a whole other group of people who are renting out vacation rentals, and they're paying taxes that the city has applied to them on that. Thousands and thousands of places. Our Lisa Halverstadt tried to get a handle this week on how many vacation rentals are out there. She did a great story. You can check that out at voiceofsandiego.org. New numbers shed light on the potential impact of this regulation. She was able to get in and get some specific numbers on what a firm has pulled together for how many of these vacation rentals are out there. I need to get that firm's name so they can get the proper credit here. But they were able to give us that data. Now, this is just one read. Updated about the vacation rentals and where they're concentrated. Obviously, Mission Beach, PB, Ocean Beach. But in the new rules, the rule is under these regulations that they were debating, the city is going to cap vacation rentals at 1% of the housing stock across the city. So if there's like 550,000 homes in the city, then there would be 5,000 vacation rentals allowed, plus 30% of Mission Beach could be a vacation rental. That was the deal. And with the money from the permits that they would give out under this cap, they would use that to enforce noise ordinances and all the things that people don't like about vacation rentals. So that was the compromise. The Hotel Workers Union forged that with Council President Jen Campbell. And the hotel workers did that with the platforms that also ended up getting on board with that compromise. So now the people who want the vacation rentals to be eliminated are so mad about that plan that they have helped lead the effort to recall Council President Campbell. So that's where we're at. They decided to pass that this week. Wild to see that the framework is now in place for regulation. Will it get challenged? Will they try to throw it out by the ballot like Airbnb did when it threw out the other ordinance they tried to pass before? Not sure, but incredible to see a so-called San Diego special, so-called by me and Todd Gloria, get resolved. Something to see there. Let's check your comments before I move on. Okay, cool. Good stuff. Thank you, Megan, for facilitating great debate Wednesday. Yes, Megan's the best. All right, let's go on to number 5. It's wild. I haven't seen any of these people for so long. Like Megan, I think I saw her at the office once in the last year since this whole thing started. Like maybe twice. I don't know. We used to see each other outside. Your desk is right across the way. It's wild. When is life? Maybe this is just life now. All right. This is the great story this week by Mackenzie Elmer about one of the biggest problems San Diego and South Bay in particular have had to deal with for decades, the sewage that pours over from Tijuana. Now, look, Tijuana has a lot of places, a lot of homes that aren't connected to sewage, and it has infrastructure that isn't that great in some spots. All of that means that when it rains, or even when it doesn't rain, sewage pours through the canyons. Tijuana is higher than us. It pours down the canyons, and then it goes into the Tijuana River. And when it rains and other things happen, it flows out into the ocean, and it's so bad and dirty that it closes beaches, sometimes up to Coronado or further. So that's the problem. And it's been that problem for a long time. Now, seems like the last 5 years, it's been a lot higher focus on that problem. I think some of it has to do with the fact that the Border Patrol started getting so upset about it and vocal about it that it elevated the issue in the Trump presidency. And also, so we had we have surfers in South Bay, Border Patrol, South Bay activists, environmental health justice advocates, all on the same page that this is a major crisis. And it has been. I mean, the city of San Diego has had an ongoing disaster declaration about this for like ever. I don't know if they re-up it like every Wednesday or something. It's always on the ballot or on the docket and it's never been resolved. Now, also the mayor in Imperial Beach, Serge Cedina, who's the first person that ever took me around in 2006 to go and look at all these areas at Smuggler's Gulch, at all these places where the sewage came in. Now, something interesting has happened recently, which is that Mexico has begun to tout that it solved the problem. Great. Now, the thing is that beaches were closed last year in San Diego County because of this issue for months. Oh, no. Sorry. Ring light. This thing is a disaster. That's one thing Megan did poorly, was recommend the worst ring light. This thing is just the most poorly constructed piece of equipment I've ever worked with. The worst thing Megan has ever done. Anyway, so the Mexican government's like, yeah, we resolved this problem. Now, all these beaches are still closed. So people are like, what's going on? Mackenzie Elmer, our environment reporter, dug into it and explains it in a great piece this week, illustrated very well by Adriana Heldis, and in partnership with Vicente Calderon from Tijuana Press. Vicente has been a wonderful collaborator for a long time. We'll probably run a Spanish version of this as well. So as they explain, here's the deal. So Mexico has for a long time diverted the Tijuana River to try to clean this stuff up before it gets to San Diego. But one of the problems is that these two, PB1B and PBCILA, they get clogged or other things happen to them. And in particular, they were getting trash, and the trash was backing up. And there was one guy named Abel, Abed, and he's like, his job was to clean it. And they'd be like, well, he's not coming, so that's not going to be clean today. It was, classic great man theory of public affairs. So they're like, we finally took care of that. We created a garbage disposal type system with these gigantic shredding knives, and it shreds the trash that comes in and it's like a garbage disposal. It flows still fine. Great. Nice garbage disposal. Then, but there's still all these spills. And so then they said, well, yeah, the power went out a few times. And also there's this other problem at this other place where it gets overwhelmed by the water. So I think this was a really interesting story from Mackenzie, if you're interested in why the problem is. Now, again, one of the biggest problems is that there's so many homes in Mexico that aren't connected to running water and sewage. And so the sewage goes into the canyon and, it washes out. It's very hard to collect something from canyons, it's like not an easy thing. And so eventually Tijuana is going to need to have a modern wastewater system. And so hopefully that happens soon, and it deserves to happen, and they need to make that happen. All right, that was our 5. I'm interested in any questions you might have. Any other ideas? Megan, you're fine. I'll forgive you for the worst ring light that has ever been sold to a person before. Do you look at this thing? I have it duct taped, trying to. Oh, now I've ruined it. No, this is just a tease. I think she does so many important things that it's just funny to pick on her about one little thing, which isn't even her fault. I dropped it like 12 times. I love you guys. Pour one out for your little Ginger who got hit by the car. I'm going to go check in on them right away. And hope you have a good, safe weekend. Wish me luck. I'm coaching girls softball. Hope I have some leadership skills for these kids, 8-year-olds. No problem. Thanks all. I will talk to you next week.